Okay, thanks very much. I'm just going to share a screen and hopefully it will all work out. Um, can you see that? Okay.
Yeah, that's all good. Thank you.
Okay, great. Uh, okay, well, it's great to be here, and congratulations on a great report. And I'm going to be rattling through some slides on the links between the UK's sort of obsession really with civil nuclear power that's been going on for some time now, this nuclear renaissance. And really, the core point is that increasingly this civil nuclear obsession is kind of inexplicable if we look at the economics, if we look at the progress of renewables and all these kind of things. And what we've documented over the years is really to understand what's driving this, we have to look at the military. The new aspect of this really is that we're in a very different environment now because this year the government has essentially admitted these links in the nuclear roadmap at the beginning of the year. And this was a big change from the past 10 years where these links have been obfuscated or indeed denied. So just to get going, really, then, is this idea that there's something strange going on with the UK and civil nuclear power. You get these extraordinary statements from government ministers that there's no limit to how much nuclear capacity they're going to build. It's what the government is all about for the next 20 years. But of course, this isn't just confined to the Conservative Party, of course. This is something that really runs across Westminster. That you're really, except from the odd critical MP here or there, there really is no kind of deviation from this obsession to build nuclear, and nothing in relation to the delays and the cost increases seem to change this. And as I say, it really doesn't make any sense because, as we know, if we look at the contracts for difference, taking into account inflation that have been made for nuclear, they are incredibly expensive and much more so than those for offshore wind and definitely for onshore wind and solar and all kinds of alternatives. And there's all kinds of things being done with electricity grids now in terms of energy efficiency and demand management investments that really can reduce CO2 emissions significantly more cheaply and faster than nuclear can. And the thing is, this trend really it's international. These are the sort of levelized cost of electricity published by Lazard, showing the incredible reductions in costs that have happened with renewables over the past 10 years. Meanwhile, the cost of nuclear has gone up. Indeed, the nuclear costs have risen by 26%, while wind costs have fallen by 70%, solar by 89%. And there's other justifications that are routinely used for nuclear. One of the famous ones is this idea of base load, that you need this firm supply of centralized, constantly always on power stations like nuclear as an essential part of an electricity grid. But increasingly, grid managers are kind of saying that this idea is outdated, and it's been confirmed by a Royal Society report in 2023, which showed that the scenarios with the inclusion of nuclear tended to be more expensive than those with less or no nuclear. So this is kind of the emerging picture, and there's now a plethora of peer-reviewed articles outlining 100% renewable scenarios and all the rest of it. And the curious thing is that the government are very reluctant, it seems, to actually publish comparable costs of levelized cost of electricity. And the last time this was properly done was back in 2016. where it was first acknowledged that nuclear was more expensive than alternatives. But curiously, for example, the 2020 white paper and so on, the sort of nuclear costs are just not discussed at all. And this is a very odd thing to do because it's usual practice in these energy papers to actually do comparative analysis. And, we see that, even with pessimistically high cost of variability, that renewables are far less costly than nuclear power. Yet the UK government remains so committed. And, another thing to point out, actually, before I get on to why, is that, in 2008, when the sort of nuclear renaissance was launched, it was all about keeping costs low and security of supply. And, we know what's happened, which is that no new nuclear has been built. Gordon Brown wanted 8 new reactors by 2020. This was considered to be essential to keep the lights on and all the rest of it. Every prediction that was made by government and official policymakers, all these certainties about the need for nuclear, it just didn't happen. What happened instead was nuclear got very expensive, was delayed, renewables got cheaper and were built. And, it's extraordinary that at the beginning of the decade, it was 10% electricity generation from renewables. We're now above 40%. So it's quite clear what works. So the question is, what's going on? Why is there this relentless enthusiasm for nuclear? And yeah, you guessed it. The bottom line is it's about a hidden UK military nuclear subsidy. That is that in order to maintain the industrial capacities, the supply chains, the skills that you need to build nuclear-powered submarines that underpin the deterrent, you need to build civil nuclear, and that covers some of the costs. And this relates to this underlying part of the UK's identity, really, about its apparent need for nuclear weapons, which is really so core to Westminster. Many people say, well, the military links are a thing of the past. People know about the history and how the civil program came out, the military program. What we've documented is with this nuclear renaissance, there's if you look at the military documents rather than civil documents, you can see ideas that the challenge is to try and mask the costs of military, nuclear and civil programs. And in 2014, there was a secret report that was only obtained from Freedom of Information request on the UK's nuclear submarine program, which outlined that the government should seek imaginative methods to better engage with the civil new build program, to leverage to maximum effect civil nuclear investment, use other nuclear facilities, including those in the civil sector. So it's really quite clear what's going on here. And Rolls-Royce have been very clear in 2017. They build the reactors for submarines, and in their small modular reactor document, they said that an advantage of SMRs would be to relieve the MOD of the burden of developing and retaining skills and capability on the military side. We submitted evidence in 2017 to Hinckley Sea inquiry, where it was confirmed by the lead civil servant at the MOD that indeed a benefit of the civil program was to support submarines, and it would require coordinated government action to do this. Government ministers have referred to the distinction between civil and military as artificial. And then everything changed with the civil nuclear roadmap in 2024. Because despite those statements I showed you earlier, there's often been a tendency when the question is directly asked that there's actually been denial by government, which seems kind of contradictory, but that's what was happening. In 2024, it was different because the nuclear roadmap identifies shared ambitions and the importance of aligning civil and defence nuclear. And as I say, as recently as 2021, these links were still being denied. And this is the crucial point, really, which is if we care about democracy, for the past 10 years, this hidden agenda for civil nuclear has not been openly discussed and scrutinized. It's an international picture. If you look at nuclear weapon states, they tend to be the countries that are most intensely pursuing new nuclear build programs. And you can see it in statements from Emmanuel Macron in France that without civil nuclear, no military nuclear. You see it in reports in the USA highlighting the interdependencies. And indeed, a report by the Atlantic Council has tried to estimate the annual value of human capital contributed to defense nuclear by civil nuclear. And so we thought we'd do the same. And this is the latest piece of the puzzle. And it's probably hard to see the details. But what we did was we basically tried to identify the entirety of the costs of what we call the singular UK nuclear complex, which includes civil nuclear and electricity consumers and the money they spend, as well as what the money the taxpayer spends. And we went through looking at all the annual budgets, and we estimated the share of the electricity consumers by looking at it as the overall profits of the electricity industry, and looking at that in terms of 9 billion, which is 15%, which is the share of nuclear. And we then have come up with a very preliminary idea of the scale of the annual subsidy that could be flowing from civil to military nuclear. And we're going to have a report coming out on this soon. It's already been presented to the Foreign Commonwealth Office, which was interesting that it was invited to be presented there. So you can read more about it. But what we've estimated is that in terms of taxpayer and the energy bill revenues, which trickles into the supply chain, and perhaps to some of the things that Linda was mentioning in terms of the skills institute set up by EDF and all the rest of it, is that there is a subsidy of around, we estimate, 5 billion a year from civil to military nuclear. And the crucial point is, because of the cost of nuclear, this subsidy means that consumers' energy bills are higher. And in red there, you can see the cost of the same equivalent power if it was from renewables and storage, which is less. So electricity bills are inflated and kept higher than they need to be in order to have this flow of money from civil to military nuclear to support military infrastructures. And that's a very fast way of going through that, but it's a preliminary analysis, and we're hoping to generate more discussion around it and bottom it out. But the point is that it's clear now, beyond any doubt, that a central driver of civil nuclear is sustaining the nuclear submarine industry, which underpins the deterrent. That submarine capabilities are insupportable without civil nuclear infrastructures. Strong government support is because of these military interests. It's clear internationally this is the case. And crucially, these pressures have been hidden until now. And the whole rationale here is to try the Trident replacement or Dreadnought, whatever it's called now, is getting so outrageously expensive, it's potentially destabilizing the entirety of the MOD budget. So there's this pressure to try and cover some of these costs off the books of MOD budgets, and that's where civil nuclear and energy bill payers come in. And this evidence has been presented and never refuted. And it's quite clear that it is the case now. And really all we've asked for is that UK energy debates are attentive to this issue, that it's discussed and scrutinised in Parliament and all these kind of things. Because ultimately, whether it's nuclear weapons or civil nuclear, the fact that these costs were hidden for so long really raises serious questions for the health of British democracy overall. So that's a very rapid run through of that, but I will leave it there. Thank you.